So welcome to the Solution Architecture session, Convergence 2011 Atlanta. Just making sure you guys are getting on the right plane here, on to Solution Architecture for Dynamics AX 2012. My name is Srinivasan. I'm an architect in the Dynamics AX R&D organization. I focus a lot on implementations and how can implementations be made successful. You know, there are portions to implementations that have product responsibilities, that have technology stack responsibilities, how the product is configured, how the product morphs into a solution by way of extensions, customizations. So that's kind of a major focus area for me in the product group. I have with me Arijit Basu.
Hey, I'm Arijit Basu. I'm a solution architect in Shree's team.
So Arijit will also be talking through different portions of implementations and what we are bringing to bear in terms of tooling, in terms of capability model for solution architects. So as a show of hands, how many customers do we have in the room here? Awesome. And how about partners? It should be the remainder, but you know, this session is going to help you build much more accountability into the partners. So that's how I would lay it out, right? So in a sense, what we are trying to do is build up a model, build up a set of tools, a set of implementation accelerators that help you build predictable implementations, bring in quality, make sure that whatever gets scoped also gets analyzed correctly, and what comes out as a solution is what you started with as a picture. You know, things of that sort need to be pretty transparent along the way. You know, it's just not that there's a set of requirements and eventually out of the pipeline comes out a solution. Along the way, there need to be a series of checkpoints. So we'll talk through that. So in terms of what a solution architect does, a solution architect is either today a developer or a business analyst who has a technical bent of mind in your implementation. It might not be a defined role, but there is somebody performing this function in pretty deep detail. You know, in the pre-sale cycle, this partner person is responding to RFIs, providing information on Dynamics AX, very important facet of their jobs. Managing implementation quality or managing the scope of the implementation, looking at the detail of an implementation, looking at the design, looking at the conceptual design, looking at infrastructure requirements, production rollout, post-production rollout, and management. All of these are functions that the solution architect does. They're ably assisted by consultants. You know, we call Simon a consultant persona, Victor a developer, and the IT engineer. So in terms of sizing, in terms of helping with building some of those developer constructs in to the implementation cycle, those are personas that absolutely help here. So quickly jumping in, why, what, and how? You know, why are we focusing so much on solution architects now? Microsoft has the MCSA, the all-up solution architect function, and we think it's very important to have implementations in Dynamics also have the same rigor coming out to build predictable implementations. So at the center of this circle, the yellow button there is the technology stack. Around it is the horizontal applications, and then you get the ISV layers on top. So you would think that the product, in our lens, is the big circle. So to us, we are the center of the universe. We basically start around that and start adding layers around it. Okay, the layers are, you know, the horizontal, the technology stack, the stack we put on top, the horizontal applications we put, the industry layers we've talked about quite a bit, become concentric circles around it. ISV or vertical solutions that you buy are concentric circles around it. Then you have extensions, and when I say extensions, those are what we categorize in implementation jargon as RICE elements: workflows, reports, integrations, customizations, extensions. And they become your extension bucket there. And then finally, last but not the least, is data configuration. It's basically the act of taking that product with all the code, the extensions, applying data composition to it in the form of parameters. So we have close to 4,000 parameters in the system. We have security requirements. We have integration requirements. The 4,000 parameters can have any set of combinations on it. I will not make you do factorial math here. It's close to 8 million combinations that can be set up on a base ERP system, right? So it requires data configuration on behalf of your partner or parts of your customer organization that together make up the final solution. Solution, in a sense, is a composition of data configuration, extensions, industry layers, if there are any, integrations to third-party vendors, EDIs, workflows that you have across a connected ecosystem. Today's world is far more a connected ecosystem than it ever was, and the future is pointing us to an even more connected universe, right? So all of these make up the solution. So there is quality bars that need to be applied to each of them. And the focus of this session is what tools do we bring to bear to apply quality bars to different steps? And how can these tools be used by our partners? And how can we educate you customers of the existence of these tools so that you can ask your partners, did you use this tool? Microsoft was talking about it. Did you use it, and what came out of it? So in a sense, we want to get to a customer dashboard view and a partner dashboard view to solution architecture tools. Further driving down into a solution, I talked about quality quite a lot, and I'm sure there's somebody in the audience counting the number of times Sri says quality today, but I will. There isn't a quiz question on it. So implementation quality, very high degree of importance is attached to it, because in a sense, your solution is a composition of code. And code and design quality lead to how well your business is running underneath it. High quality testing or testing with the right data set, data composition is required, and the ability to design for scale. Organizations today are planning not only for transactions for today, they're also planning for transactions by way of inorganic growth, organic growth, inorganic meaning growth by way of acquisitions or getting to be part of an acquisition. You know, all of those are happening, right? You're adding companies, you're adding different parts, new businesses, all these are commonplace. So it's very important to think about what you build as something for the future and not for today. One of our technical fellows at Microsoft used to say, design is not quality for today, but it's quality for tomorrow. And it's basically the ability for you to extend that differentiates a good design from one that is not. Conceptual model. So as soon as you get into the act of deciding a solution, the very first thing you want to do is kind of lay out the boxes and say, hey, what is the solution going to be about? Where is there fit and where is there a mismatch? Where do I have to extend, and what can I live with and what can I not live with? Oftentimes, I don't know how many of you will agree with me, but I have seen solutions where customers are trying to implement their old system in Dynamics AX, not trying to implement what Dynamics AX is good at, right? They're trying to force fit their old system, not a green screen system, I won't go that far, but it's more about usability, trying to replicate that model of work in Dynamics AX. You know, it's one of those where you're trying to stretch a system. I can go to many analogies and I will stay away from those, but you're trying to force fit something that's not there, right? It's possible, it requires a lot more effort. So in a sense, you've got to come at it from a conceptual design angle and look at all those boxes, how those boxes play, what can I live with, what can I not live with, do I need to extend this? When you think about extensions, when we think about customizations, it's absolutely important to think about, can I upgrade this solution? There's many places where what happens is you build code really fast, you put it in forms in places that you should not be, and the next release comes and your partner says, oh, the cost of your upgrade is going to be X percentage. And that X is not a good word, for a good number for you, right? It happens. that number gets decided when you conceptually lay out your system. It's where you build the building blocks for upgrades. We provide great upgrade tools. We'll continue to, and we'll make it better. We'll innovate like crazy on it. But the act of getting a good conceptual layout and keeping your system simple is absolutely a responsibility that your partner has, and you are accountable to your partner to make him do that. From a logical view standpoint, then the very next step is orchestration of the software components, what parts, who's going to fit in terms of doing, say, a payment provider's job, who's going to provide me RFID services, does Microsoft do this and Microsoft do that. So basically the next view is kind of bringing the software components together, doing some design work, doing some functional requirements and in-depth work there. The final phase is actually the physical implementation, which is taking the code, putting it to metal, that is, putting it to the hardware, getting the infrastructure planned and executed, providing a high availability design, having a disaster recovery plan, and kind of having a post-production plan. How many of you deliberately, I'll put it out to customers, have a what if my system slows down plan after, do you guys have a deliberate plan? 1, 2. Okay. So that kind of a disaster recovery planning is absolutely essential to a predictable implementation. When you have a system slowdown, and system slowdowns do occur because of multitude of reasons, I think it's very important for you to know where to start, what collection to have, do you already have collection going on, and what to go at. You want to be very educated about it, intentional about how you go about addressing the problem at hand. So the solution architect, in a sense, is a combination of a project manager, a sales guy, you've got the business analyst, you've got the project manager, you've got the sales guy from a partner ecosystem perspective, you've got the developer who spans a set of phases, and then you have the solution architect who kind of spans the whole ecosystem. He's been there during your sales cycle, so he's absolutely a chokeable neck from your partner ecosystem to go at, right? And then they know what architecture to lay out. If you don't have this function, or you're in doubt with your partner as to who it is, absolutely talk to your partner and say, hey, who's doing these functions? So underneath the covers, some of the functions the solution architects do are listed out here. I'm not going to go in here, but all of these are focused towards the quality word, the predictable implementation word. It's more about driving predictable implementations, getting into deployments that are high quality, extensible, and upgradable. There's a number of tools, and we'll be talking through some of these tools today, that can assist a solution architect or your implementation have a world-class solution architecture underneath it. So what we are going to quickly talk through, I'll spend about 2 minutes on product architecture, then we'll get into some of the tools around conceptual solution and simple design and tenets around it. So we'll basically talk about product architecture, conceptualization of a solution, how to design, how to build, what are the tools available to you, and how to finish in terms of testing, monitoring, debugging, high availability, deployment considerations. So from a framework standpoint, just to level set our architecture, we've got SQL Server at the bottom of the stack, the OLTP database in the middle, SharePoint database on the side that has content repositories and metadata, and then you have SSRS and SSAS for analytics. The next level up is our application server that does a new set of services in addition to what it did in the past. The application server is a .NET entity now. X++ runs in the .NET IL2, in the .NET environment too. So you get a lot of performance benefits. You get new communication protocols. You get service enablement at the application server tier. The application server runs the .NET runtime in process. Workflow runs within the application server now. And hence, you don't need to have yet another workflow server. You just have the application server do the workflow functions for you. The next layer up is a set of integration hosts, SharePoint servers, and reporting servers for you that allow you to integrate to N applications. So integration hosts around a file adapter or an MSM queue or BizTalk. SharePoint talking to AX, help server contextually looking at metadata, SSRS and SSAS for reporting. And then finally, it's our different clients. On the first client is Excel. You've seen it in a lot of the keynotes, where Excel now can talk directly through the black line on the side to the application server, the AOS, directly. So this is new, brand new. In the past, you had to go through bc.net into the application server. Now you go directly into the application server or the AOS. The enterprise portal story remains the same, though the content and the user experience has been greatly enhanced. And the rich client shares a lot with the enterprise portal and vice versa. We also have VS and Morphex for development going at the same metadata store. So you're sharing code between the more classic Morphex experience and Visual Studio. So there is the power of analytics, leveraging SQL Server. We leverage SQL Server to the hilt. Scale up and scale out from a scalability perspective. A solution architect always thinks about, how do I go to the latest and greatest hardware? How do I make hardware solve the problem for me? So you have the ability to scale up and scale out. You have both the online and batch server. We are one of the few ERPs that have the ability to convert an application server to either be online or batch or both without much configuration. You run X++ in IL or faster DLL form in the .NET in-process MS Corelib. We talked WCF as a new communication protocol in addition to RPC in the past. Next generation reporting through SSRS and analytics. Easy install. We've had a manageability experience change, visual experience in terms of the action pane, the ribbon, the fact boxes and the information boxes have been put in place. Visual experience kind of gets shared. Simpler integrations for both going direct and then model-driven developer experience. So the solution starts with the product, the technology stack, right in the middle. Then there is functional coverage. And I won't spend a lot of time on functional coverage because that's a couple of slides, a couple of sessions in itself. There's close to 20 sessions on them, all the way from the application foundation, where we've addressed data sharing by way of chart of accounts, the ledger being shared, functional dimensions, financial dimensions, where you can go to n dimensions now. Any number of dimensions. You can have dimension constraints. You can define business policies that's surfaced up through the audit functionality. If you've seen the audit functionality, from a horizontal applications layer standpoint, we've enabled supply chain, product information management, SRM, the ability for you to expand out to all your employees for time and attendance, expense, managing requisitions, CPM, and risk and compliance from a financial standpoint, world-class financials in terms of separation of accounting and operations. And then there is a layer from an industry standpoint where we've built competencies around manufacturing. For those of you who've gone to the manufacturing sessions and those who haven't, what we've done is we built synergies across process, discrete, and lean, and surfaced it up for you to reuse. So basically, something that's a process industry always has some level of discrete. And in the current economy, some level of lean principles have to be applied for getting products out when products are needed. So with one code base, you can enable all three principles. And that's kind of the power of bringing the code bases together. So you have other industries and distributions, services, and the newly anointed public sector industries that have been brought to bear. So from an extensions perspective, I think it's very important to look at extension quality. That is, how do these verticals play? How do my extensions in X++ code and .NET code play out? Okay. And then there is the configuration, data coding, data migration, development, maintenance, the ALM lifecycle that is kind of critical and important. So I'm going to quickly demo one of the areas. So we had some demo problems yesterday, but hopefully today we will not. So I'm going to close these side boxes. So this is basically a design tool that's there for your assistants. Okay? And the design tool, what it does is, it's old school to say, show me my data model, right? We have addressed it in many forms. Here's another form where going at your metadata store, you can reverse engineer to your data model. Okay? And this is not just for what we have shipped. You add your layer, you just point this tool and reverse engineer to see whether your stuff fits in or not. Very powerful. Okay? You can get to the help server right out of here. And then you can go dig deeper into this model. So I can either scroll this way, different cool ways of scrolling. So I can dig deeper. I don't know whether this has more, but I can generate next level of the data model, and you can see that the next level also got generated, right? So that's the data model side of the view. Data model, this view is very important for things like managing your data migration, managing certain other artifacts. It's very important for you to understand how Microsoft Dynamics AX 2012 is laying out data, and how are your extensions being laid there. It's also a place where you can look at your metadata carefully, how you've done your extensions, and gauge upgradability of your solution. So the next part to this mix is classes. So I'm just going to take a contextual class, sales form letter invoice, which a lot of you know. It's the invoice posting class, sales invoice posting class. So let's just generate the class diagram for it and the class hierarchies. So as you can see, the class hierarchy is here, and I can get help around it. Okay? So I can easily expand and understand where to extend in a hierarchy. Oftentimes you struggle. Should I go to sales form letter? Should I go to sales form invoice? Where should I go? Now, the puzzle is not yet complete. So there's the data model diagram, there's the class diagram, and there's the third part, which is how does my design flow in terms of code? If I knew all three pieces, I'm absolutely set. I will never make mistakes as a developer. No, that's just an excuse that has to be self-fulfilling prophecy for a developer. So let me take, I'm just going to take any method.
Init from sales line?
That's fine. So I'm creating sales orders, and I want to know what does init from sales line do. So here I have, it's pretty cool, huh? So now you have a view where you can generate sequence diagrams for what is AX doing in code. So sales line calls sales line type through this method here. Then sales line type invokes and finds a sales table, does the find, and onwards and out, right? So you have the ability to fully understand the design and be more educated about where you go extend. As a customer, I think you have to take the oath today to ask your partner, where is my sequence diagram? It's very important to use that as a design tool to understand how to extend, how to manage your code base. So I will take a few more examples. I don't know that there are sequence diagrams underneath the covers. There is not much code here. It's not doing much. So you can start playing around and decide which ones have code in it and manage it. Now, some of the functions take much longer to generate because there is a lot more code in it. So for example, sales form letter invoice run takes about 3 to 4 minutes to generate the sequence diagram, but that's okay. It's a one-time artifact. You generate it, you can export it to XML, you can export it to Visio, and kind of use it as a design surface. In the future, we'll use this as a design surface from where, in the future, let me be very clear, from where you can forward engineer into code. So that's on the conceptual front. So taking this further, implementations need a level of conceptualization, and we've talked about conceptualization quite a bit. Important to understand all the solution concepts, making sure functionality fit gap is there. So some of the tools we have available for you are obviously functional coverage. We have something called Q&A repository that I'm going to demo to you now. Tighter stack integration has come about. In the next steps, there is design, which I just showed you, a design tool around managing your data model, understanding the design patterns, and being clear about a test design. So we showed you some of the tools, and we'll go deeper there. From a development standpoint, do you want to cover that?
Yeah. So from a development standpoint, we've added a bunch of tools, a bunch of new features, which are actually going to help you write smarter customizations. So one of the tools which we showed was the SDK tool, which is laying the foundation for smart customization. So what it's going to tell developers is, if I'm writing code in this place, how vulnerable is it to my upgrade? Is this the right place? Am I doing the right thing? And this is transparent so that partners as well as customers can share that and bring about a much more easier upgrade path and a better manageable code base. That's very important, because the good design, you should spend around 60% time in design, so that once you do the design correctly, the rest of it flows smoothly. So complementing the design, we've added a lot of tools inside AX. We are on the process of adding tools like a code analysis tool, which will pretty much give you complexity of classes. So if someone has written a class or a code base, how complex is it for you to go ahead and manage it? How easy or how difficult is it to go ahead and upgrade that? So these tools will be very much available to partners and customers, so they are transparent of the development implementation process. So they know that what are the risks they are taking, what are the future implications of doing a code upgrade, and then they can actually take a call on whether to go ahead and take the risk of having a higher cost upgrade or leave it in the system so that the upgrade is less painful. Other than that, we've got a very much tighter integration with Visual Studio, so which brings about a whole new resources, like people who are comfortable on the Visual Studio platform will be able to work with much ease using AX, and the AX metadata is surfaced into Visual Studio. I'll go through a demo after we have a couple of demos from Sri regarding the Q&A tool. And we've got another bunch of tools on tracing, code analysis, performance, reporting, and BI. Very cool thing, like the moment you change your metadata, previously you had to regenerate the cubes and change the config keys. But right now we've got the engine, so if you change any configuration keys, you can just redeploy the cubes using the wizard, and the underneath plumbing is going to do everything for you. So you really don't have to go into bids and change the code. So doing this, doing a lot of work underneath, we've reduced your time of configuration and reconfiguration. Because configurations changed, you need to turn off, turn on features. So this tool or this feature will actually help you reduce your downtime of a BI reconfiguration. Testing, yes, a good test is something like you catch most of the bugs. It's better to do extended testing before the solution deployment, so that all the bugs or the unwanted things are actually trapped before the user acceptance testing completes. So the end users have a very nice usability and an experience. So just to keep in the testing concepts, we've added a very strong integration with Visual Studio Team System, or the Team Foundation server. So using the Visual Studio test framework, you can actually go ahead and test customizations and functionalities inside AX. So a common functionality would be like you've developed something on the enterprise portal. You want to really know what would be the user experience when they browse through the enterprise portal. Is it slow? Is it fast? How are the parts loading? Which of the parts are actually surfacing more data than it's supposed to do? So you have the Visual Studio 2010 web test framework, where you can actually wire it up with your enterprise portal, and the system's going to generate the script for you. So if, as a developer or as a company, you want to generate a service, say you have an event, you want to publish that event on your website and get in some registrations and put it into AX, or even a survey, like if you're a training company. So you can pretty much develop services using right-click, which I will show you after some time, and test whether that service can withstand 1,000 people logging into the service or your website, submitting feedback, or submitting registrations. So using the simple box environment, you can actually replicate user scenarios, load scenarios. What would be the user experience in terms of performance? Is it very slow? Is it very fast? What if my users are not connected to the LAN? What if they are on a CDMA or a USB stick? How do I enhance the user experience? So you can do all that using the Visual Studio test framework, which has been tightly integrated. So there are a couple of deep dive sessions on the test framework, which I think you should see. And when you have actually tested the solution, it calls for deployment. So deployment, there has been a bunch of improvements. We've got an installer that can be upgraded, so you really don't need to download another installer. And this is linked with your Windows update. So when you run Windows Update, when you run the installer, it's going to ask you whether you want to update it from Windows Update, like pretty much you do for your operating system. And whenever there is an upgrade on the AX installer, the system's going to actually go ahead and upgrade that installer for you, which means less moving parts or less code to manage and smoother deployments. We've got a very tight integration with System Center Operations Manager 2012 and AX 2012 Management Pack. So I'll just skip through the demos and show you how easy it is to go ahead and manage multiple environments, complex environments. You have the option of deploying with System Center Configuration Manager. And when you've deployed, what are the diagnostics tools? Like, yes, we all know that the day the ERP goes live, all the performance issues and the user cries and the things start off. So what are the tools which we're actually putting forward for your assistant? So whenever a user says, hey, I'm experiencing slow performance, this form is not opening correctly, posting a journal is very slow, or if I'm posting a sales order, the screen goes white. So remotely, how can you actually go ahead, use tools to find out what the issue is so you can resolve it? So pretty much we are coming up with the diagnostics framework. So and these numbers, they're pretty much what we have in the SDLC. So we are adding value at every step. Shri, over to you for the
Sure.
So conceptualize tool which we've come up with.
So a little out of the order, but we'll go through a conceptualized tool. So these tools are going to be available. We're bringing the cloud to bear for you in more ways than one. So this tool is available, will be available to both partners and customers. Customers more for information, partners to help them conceptualize solutions, as well as sell our solutions to the marketplace. So this will be available through partner source and customer source as AX 2012 becomes available in the marketplace. So let's just log into this site, and this is a test site, and there's not a lot of hand waving. If the network goes down, then we have a problem. So the tool is meant to address the issue of where should I go to find information on Dynamics AX 2012. So contextually, you've all seen the hierarchy diagram that has been there, that has been provided. So the same diagram is kind of represented here in a dynamic format. Okay. So if I were to say framework clients, it'll pull out the set of questions for client. If it's server, then it pulls out a set of questions for server, and then for tools and onwards, right? You also have documents related to this that basically describe to you contextual pieces of information. This is not fully primed, so we're just showing you a preview version of it. And this is the first time it has been showed anywhere, so you guys are the first ones to see it. So you can take any questions and search. So let's say, being the performance guy that I am, I'm going to search for performance. And I get a set of questions on performance, and it gives me the answers for them too. And it'll be a community effort wherein the best answers get moderated in, and we will start with about 2,500 questions and expand. As a partner, you have the ability to add new questions. As a participant, you have the ability to add new questions and get answers for it. So let's take the taxonomy a little deeper and say that I want to add this into a document. I can add it into a document.
So pretty much if you're working on an RFP and,
Yeah.
and the solution architect doesn't have to now go ahead and run behind the functional finance guy or the production guy or the projects guy, he can pretty much log into this tool, get a list of all the questions, add it to basket, and actually go ahead and export the data out into the
Excel.
tools, into versions of AX, and directly consume it.
Yeah, right out of there for you to kind of take the answers into some form of fruition for a pre-sales cycle.
Yes, so we are drastically reducing the time, because I had been in part of the place where we used to get RFPs or thousands of lines of Excel and had to run behind the functional person, coordinating, replying all these to this. So we've pretty much reduced it to a one-person effort where the consultant actually logs into the site, searches all the question, exports it in Excel, and just does a copy-paste. And if there's a question which is not there, they have an option of actually going ahead and submitting it, which would be answered by either the community or by the Microsoft team.
Yeah, and they have the ability to, as Arijit described, add a new question, apply certain taxonomy rules to it, and wait for the answer. The answer will have videos, PowerPoint presentations. Answers can have any number of attachments, and they're all searchable. Available to you, linked through partner source and customer source. So with that, let's move on to the next set of demos and around development. No, let's go straight into development.
Right. So that tool would really reduce your time to find out. And during implementations, you can actually go ahead and use that to find out what's the best way of configuring it. Coming back into development, we've added a bunch of tools into AX. And I'll highlight some of the very important ones. For example, like things like the services framework, the Visual Studio integration, and how easy it is to go ahead and deploy, build, manage solutions on multiple platforms, like the enterprise portal, anything on the web, how easy it is to go ahead and deploy. So just bringing up the Code Explorer. So what we have here is a quick demo on a small project which I had built, which has got a conference attendees table. So people who have registered, conference attendees. It's got a few names. It's got some data types, which is very familiar. It's got one class, and it's got some new things which are called service groups. So what you want to do is, suppose you're hosting a conference, and you want to expose this and show it on your company website so that people can register. They can actually hook it up with your payment system and get all the data in your ERP system, and enable end users to real-time view what are the registrations without building a very fancy report. So how do we enable this and reduce the downtime or reduce the time for development? So we've got this class, we've got this table out here. We've got a class which has got the methods written. So there's a very simple method called create attendee. I won't go into deep down details, but what this does is it just inserts the employee record. Now you've built this in AX. Now you need your architect or your solution developer to actually make it into a service. Like other versions, you had to make a wizard, you had to write a lot of code, and you had to do a bunch of configurations. What the important thing is that in any class which you want to expose as a service, you just have to write this entry point method. You have to write that. So I'll just show you how it can be done. I'll create a quick method. That's it. So I've just created an empty method, my method. Now, let's assume this contains your business logic, which you want to expose to partners, customers, vendors. Once you have created that method, you create a service. In the operation, just click Add Operations. What the system or the runtime is going to discover is it's going to find out all these methods which you want to expose as services. Now, once it does, you have the option of just right-clicking and adding it to your service. Once you have added it to your service, this becomes a contract or a service operation. It is that simple. Once you've done that, you create a service group, right-click, and just deploy the group. What the system is going to do is, underneath the covers, it's going to generate the artifacts and deploy the service on your AOS server. Zero code, right-click and deploy services. So pretty much if you want to extend your services, you want to integrate with a non-Microsoft platform, you want to integrate with a third-party system, this is the way of right-click deploying as easy as it gets. So once you've deployed this as a service group, you can actually go ahead into Visual Studio. I'll bring Visual Studio up and show you. Yeah. So once you've developed that service out here, you can consume that service inside Visual Studio or anything like that. I have a small project which I've built for you. And if you've noticed, on the left-hand side, we've got the AX AOT right inside Visual Studio. So developers who are usually working with the VS environment and developers who are on the X++ environment share the same metadata. And this is the same metadata, so if anything gets added into the Visual Studio project, or if anything gets added into AX, it is immediately surfaced into Visual Studio, so both the developers on the different platform are synchronized. And what this brings about is more resources who are very comfortable on Visual Studio to work directly on AX. So you can pretty much build a very simple application out here, and when you run that, it will actually go ahead and say, hello, this is a service. So when you do the register, it's got the attendee created, and when I actually go into this table, open it, and there you go. So deploying a service, creating an application is now reduced drastically. Another very important thing which is important is, previously, if developers had to write code on Visual Studio for integration or any other thing, it would be very difficult to package. But right now, with the new deployment model which we brought and the model-driven architecture, developers can actually go ahead, add a new project, say a EP web application project. The project is done. Right-click, add to AOT. What the system is going to do, add this entire Visual Studio project right inside your AX metadata. So when you are deploying a model or you are deploying a solution, say ISVs or partners, when they're sending solutions to the customers, or ISVs who are sending solution to partners or customers, can actually go ahead and deploy it. So just add it to AOT. And in the AOT, when I have a Visual Studio project, web applications, and there's your application. So once this service has been done, you also have the option of creating a test project. So open up Visual Studio again, and you can actually have the option of creating a test framework of this service. So you can test out whether it's going to work, how the user experience is going to be like. So I already have a test project out here, which is the standard Visual Studio 2010 test project. And in the test project, you can add this service or any interface or anything or any functionality as a reference, and you can actually test it out what the end user experience is going to be like. So it'll be as simple as add, and any of the testing, coded test, order test, generic test. So you can actually go ahead and test the entire framework from Visual Studio before actually giving it to end users. So these are some. And another very important thing is, now since you've entered data into the system, now you would like your end users to go and view this data without writing any code or without writing any reports. So what do? You have support for OData. You create a query. You go to AX. You add this query in the document references. And what the system does is, you can actually generate OData query. So I'll just copy this. And this is just no code. So this is the feed, the RSS feed, which has been generated right from your table. Obviously, the security rights and privileges are honored. So you can actually take this RSS feed or the data feed and give it to your end users so they can actually view it as a report. So how does it work? Copy the data feed, run Excel, everyone's favorite tool. Go into Power Pivot. It's a free download. going to bring up the Power Pivot wizard. Here you select the data feed. Control V. Just test the connection. Next. There you have your data. This is end user BI, which has been made possible using the latest technologies on the AX platform as well as new technologies on the data exchange platform. So end user goes, OK, finish, close. And that's the report. And pretty much, you want to refresh it, just refresh on a timely basis. So anything comes up, the registration or the attendee wants to find out how many people have registered. That's the report, which has just been done using a click. And you can pretty much right now go ahead and filter it, sort it. OK, it's a quick, small demo. So Sri, over to you.
On trace parser, right?
Yes. So
we've
got a lot of tools, so we really need 2 hours time.
Yeah. So the other thing you can do with services quickly is, take like a WCF test client. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit that. Go through a WCF test client and just directly access that and use that as a basic test client for yourself. So the other part I'm going to show you is Dynamics AX 2012 and the trace parser. So as your partner developer has built the code, it's important for them to also look at the design aspects of the code as well as the runtime characteristics of the code. So this is the new and improved trace parser that comes with AX. It has a Crimson trace. And the Crimson trace basically allows you to look at the code in great gory detail. So in this particular case, I'll just quickly walk through the top graphs here. So you have the X++ methods, and in this particular case, I look at all the X++ methods that are there. I can look at the code underneath it right here. Who called it? Where is the code in reference to the greater call stack? So it tells me that this code came from an RPC call, which in turn called this method, and then the init from invent table, which you saw in the design. And you can vet the design back here into seeing what all else got called here, right? You can also look at the SQL view to look at which SQLs were called the most and which ones took the most amount of time and who called it in terms of response time. The other thing you can do is rather than go to the AOT, you can figure out what are the indexes for a particular table. As you're doing your analysis, you don't have to switch back and forth. So data dictionary elements can be viewed right here, and you can figure out what you have done in terms of analysis streams. Okay, so that's from the moment you have done your development, make sure your partner developer is doing this as a partner. Go through the exercise of analyzing your code, both by way of design as well as runtime characterization. So with that, do you want to move into the monitoring section? Yeah.
So right now, yep. So right now, when you've actually built the code, deployed it, you have to go ahead and basically deploy the code, manage the environment, and monitor how it's going. So pretty much we've added support for SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager, for deploying clients or any other configurations over the network. And we've got a very tight integration with your System Center Operations Manager. But before this, I would like to bring about one point which we wanted to bring out is now you've done your analysis, your design, development, but where is one single repository where you actually go ahead and put this in? So there has to be one place where a developer or a manager can actually go in and see, okay, what are the bugs, what are the change requests, what are the issues that have been faced, what's the status of the bugs. So what we've got here is Team Foundation Server 2010 access or integration. So in Team Foundation Server, you can actually create projects. You can actually log in. And using AX 2012 version control parameters, you can set this to a Team Foundation Server, and you can check in, check out objects and manage the development. Now when this is into the Team Foundation Server, a person can actually go in, view, find like what are the user's bug, how many tasks are active, what are my queries, how many user stories are activated. So as a functional owner, you can actually create a test case, a user story, a new change request, and this is all synchronized with AX. And how it's done, so any developer who's done code or doing any customization, you actually can view the source code of objects which have been checked out, checked in with history, which layer is it, directly from Visual Studio 2010 Team Foundation Server. So this is the single place which will actually help you manage your application lifecycles, or what we call as ALM, the application lifecycle management. So very tight integration, so recommend partners and customers to utilize this fully, so you can pretty much go ahead and manage that. Coming back into deployment, once the solution has been actually deployed, we have the System Center or the SCOM integration. Now, we have a management pack for System Center, and you have management packs for pretty much all of the components which make up the AX stack, like SQL Server, BizTalk, your SharePoint, TFS, everything. Now, with AX 2012, you can actually view how many databases you have, which means your environments. So typically, in any implementation, you would have a dev, a test, a pre-production, a production. So you can manage all that from here. You can find out about the environment health. So we've wired it up so there is an error and there is a warning. So in case any of your environments are giving a warning signal or have an error, you can pretty much go ahead, right-click. Yep. So that brings about the diagram view for you. And in the diagram view, you can actually find out where the error is, because it drills down exactly to where the issue is. So you know that the issue is out here in this node. You also have warnings. So once you get the issue out here, you can find out what the issue is. The service calls are not getting run. So my AOS server is stopped. So what do? You right-click, go to Health Explorer, and it's going to go ahead and tell you exactly what the issue is, and if there are knowledges. So we are updating this content, so you would actually have a knowledge base telling you what to do. So we have some knowledge base for this database. So if you go to the Health Explorer, it's giving a warning, and if you go to knowledge, it's going to tell you like this what the resolution is. So this is actually reducing your time to troubleshoot issues and solve it, rather than go out for expensive support or call third parties. This is one important thing which should be done in any deployment environment. Another thing which we have got here is the IDMF, or the Intelligent Data Management Framework. So what the IDMF would do, I'll just bring it up. Yeah. The IDMF would manage your data in terms of what's the size of my database, what are the indexes, how much of the database is fragmented. So this would be more of a DBA kind of a dashboard. So the DBA would actually log in and see the different compositions of his data, tables by data size, number of companies. You have performance dashboard, so statistics on each individual tables per company, which will give you a very good visualization of your data composition, your business growth. How much do I need to expand or scale out my database server? Do I need more disks on my SAN? Or how the other performance is going, how my indexes are being fragmented, because that's actually reducing your performance. You actually have details like your database configuration. You have your query statistics. So people who are into tuning would find this extremely useful to find out the which query is taking the most time. Like I do a select star from invent table or invent dim, it's taking a lot of time. But how do I know what's causing the error? So this is actually going to help you find out or troubleshoot the error.
So we talked about it in the previous performance session, where you can take things like elapsed time, worker time differential, and do analysis out of this. You can also take things like table statistics and find out which tables are missing a clustered index. Where do you see the most amount of lock wait time? Right now there's no locking in the system. But it also shows you missing indexes and cacheable tables in AX. Caching is a big component in AX. So as a solution architect, this is kind of your tool in your test environment itself to better analyze what is going on from a performance standpoint. Okay?
Yeah,
What's
so
next?
Coming back to the presentation. So yeah, over to you.
Okay.
So pretty much we've got the SDLC, and we are adding a bunch of tools. So
we walked through the deployment, the conceptualization in terms of QA repositories, how to design the tools that you have for assistance there. We walked through the model-driven nature of architecture, integration with VS, some basic development, but basically you can take those services and you can apply the services through WCF test clients and VS load testing tools and unit testing tools to kind of do most of your test management. Testing by way of VS 2010, there's a number of sessions on it, and you saw some portions of SCOM and IDMF. In terms of managing solution quality, obviously there's a few tenets to consider. Scalability, performance, whether you have extensibility baked in, interoperability with the AOS as an object, maintainability of your solution, manageability in terms of the different ALM elements, application lifecycle enablers. There's a setup solution session on PowerShell where it helps you manage all your development artifacts. And we've provided the interfaces, and as a partner, as a customer, you can extend it to meet and suit your IT needs. So PowerShell manageability basis has been provided as a management shell. New security environment, as a solution architect, you're able to meet the needs of what the marketplace requires from a security, both from a code access as well as a data security standpoint. Some solution deployment considerations for the architecture. It's the same architecture where I have summarized some of the boxes and made it a little simpler. From a SQL Server perspective, we support everything SQL Server and Windows provides in terms of high availability clustering. So, all the log shipping, replication, mirroring, whatever options you choose, any cluster configuration SQL Server supports and Windows supports, we do. High availability in terms of AOS. RPC is a stateful application server, so the AOS load balancer stays in play. With WCF, there are some opportunities for stateless load balancing capabilities that come into play this release. Virtualization is absolutely supported in all tiers. High availability, clustering, security, all of those things are standard components for anything IIS related. We don't do anything new. You just get what has been built in.
So when you're actually deploying your solution, you and the partner and the customer should consider these factors when you're actually doing the sizing, the architecture and topology.
So from a deployment, finally, there is the terminal server situation around, how many terminal servers do we need, terminal server high availability, anything that terminal server supports or our competitive products that we also support, we provide you those hooks and balances from a solution deployment considerations. In the performance session later today, we'll be deep diving into some of the sizing requirements, and that's the next session after. So from a solution architecture tools roadmap, you saw a number of tools in terms of the QA repository, some of the core concept elements. We are planning a diagnostics framework that basically sits in the cloud. It's a service that gets downloaded. You get to apply certain policies against your environment. The environment gets analyzed, and you get the ability to be alerted with things like, you don't have enough MDB files for SQL Server, or you're missing a patch, or you're missing a regulatory requirement. Things of that sort can be managed through the diagnostics framework. It's the first step in a series of things we'll provide as diagnostics, leading to what we think are self-healing systems. You will see a sizing framework come about, a lightweight tracing tool that basically helps you analyze your workloads across rich client usage, some installation verification tools. That's what is in the hamper from a tool standpoint for AX 2012. At this point, enjoy the conference. We're open for questions, and we're here for the next 10 minutes for questions. There's interactive discussions that follow too. We're repeating this session again also.
Tomorrow, same time.
Thank you.